You're watching the Cox Channel, exclusively provided for Cox Communications. It's local and only on Cox. The following is a public affairs presentation. Inside the Issues with your host, Jim Dunlap and Pat Hall.
Welcome back to Inside the Issues. I'm Jim Dunlap, and I'd like to welcome back my co-host, Pat Hall.
Great to be back.
Who was gone last week and couldn't join us, but we're here together again and trying to bring you inside the issues out the state capitol. And Pat, we've made it to the halfway point of session.
Yeah, I can't believe it, Jim. I think in early February, we just couldn't even see this date, which is Hump Week for the Oklahoma legislature. It means that they start the downhill, and unfortunately, it means they have to actually start looking at the budget, start making some decisions. Before we go there, I really want to give a shout out to George Duncan, who's worked at the Oklahoma House of Representatives for many years. George and I were actually in the Army Reserves in the 70s together.
Yep, he's a fine man, and those sergeants out the Capitol do a nice job taking care of people. What are we going to talk about today, Pat?
Well, we're honored to have former, and I think he likes this term, former Attorney General Drew Edmondson that's going to join us today and talk about the Justice Commission, of which he's chair of. We're going to also talk about the DNA post-conviction legislation. And as I warned him in the green room, we're also going to talk to him about life after politics.
Well, it's a great honor to have the former Attorney General and a good friend of both of ours, Drew Edmondson, with us today. And we hope you'll join us right after this short break on Inside the Issues.
Welcome back to Inside the Issues. I'm Pat Hall with my good friend and co-host Jim Dunlap, and today we're honored to have former Attorney General Drew Edmondson, a longtime friend of both of ours, and a frequent guest on Inside the Issues, so we couldn't let you leave without coming back and talking about the Justice Commission.
Well, it's great to be back. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, General, what is the commission? And since you've left office now, you're still staying involved in the legal world and what this commission does. And can you just give us a background of what it is?
Well, the Justice Commission was formed by resolution of the Oklahoma Bar Association in September of 2010. And it was to be comprised of people in all specters of the justice system. Judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, scholars, citizens. They asked me to serve as chair. Under the resolution, the chair is the president of the bar or his or her designee. And the last 3 bar presidents have asked me to chair this commission. We've been meeting monthly since February of 2011. Spent the first year looking at cases where people have been exonerated, people who were convicted and were later determined to be actually innocent, not reversed on some fluke in the law, but determined to not have been the person who committed the crime. We looked at those cases and then spent the second year trying to formulate solutions to whatever went wrong in those cases, tweaks to the system to try to keep that from happening.
So the commission's charge is really just to make our judicial system the best it can be.
That should be all of our charge, but
right.
Yes, it certainly is, to figure out what went wrong and to see if we can't fix it without hampering prosecution. You know, the easy way to keep innocent people from being convicted is not to prosecute anyone.
Right.
But we don't want to do that. We want effective prosecution, but we think the system can be done better.
Yeah, it's not to prosecute more or find more people guilty or find more people innocent or exonerate more people. It's to make it operate correctly
That is correct.
and get it right the first time.
And what we found these are cases where usually it's DNA that has proved that they didn't commit the offense, that someone else's blood or semen was at the scene, someone else must have done it. It was remarkable to us that in those cases, these were people that were found to be innocent. 27% of them involved confessions, people who had wrongfully confessed to crimes that they did not commit. A huge percent of them involve bad identification, where sometimes it's the victim, for instance in a rape case, that points at the defendant and says, "That's the man, I'll never forget his face," and it turns out it wasn't the man. These were surprising to us.
Pat, if I could, can I go back to the confession? 27% are confessed. Were they coerced into their confession, or is there?
A wide variety. Some of them are confess after lengthy interrogation,
Right.
where they get worn down and ultimately confess. Some of them start off confessing because of mental problems or the desire to please the police officer. Some of them confess thinking that if they don't, they're going to get a more severe punishment if they go to trial. What struck me was, we used to do DNA analysis to determine whether or not a case needed DNA testing. And the first question I always asked was, well, did he confess? And if the answer came back, yes, he confessed, I would be less likely to think we needed to do DNA testing. Well, that's not necessarily an end of the argument. A confession can be a wrongful confession.
Well, let me set the record straight. That wasn't as Attorney General. That was actually as
Right.
the District Attorney for Muskogee County.
No, that was as Attorney
As
General
Attorney
when
General.
we were reviewing cases on appeal.
For death penalty?
Death penalty cases as well, yes.
So I know the Justice Commission was made up of members of the legislature. I saw the name Bob Rabbits, Oklahoma County Public Defender, and as you said, scholars and other legal minds. But there's always a problem that's trying to be solved. I doubt this commission came out of somebody said, let's have a commission on this. Had there been a case that brought this to light? Had there been several cases? Why would, in the year 2010, why would we have a commission?
There were several cases. There was a case of, I think his name was Phelps, who was convicted of first-degree rape, and it's one where there was an eyewitness identification that was absolutely certain, and no DNA testing at the time. The offense was committed that long ago, and when DNA testing became available, and this was after he'd served a number of years in prison, it was determined that he was not the person who committed the offense. And then there were the two individuals from Pontotoc County that Grisham wrote a book about. That was a high-profile case. But it's also symbolic. Oklahoma's not alone in this. There are national commissions looking at death penalty in particular, but looking at wrongful convictions. And Oklahoma simply discovered that it has some of those cases as well, and that we kind of need to take a look at the system.
And there actually can be a financial obligation to the state. If that person is exonerated, they can make a claim back on the state or the local jurisdiction that actually erred in handling the evidence. Is that correct?
That's correct. And both at common law for wrongful imprisonment, but also we've passed a statute to allow someone to go back in and ask for monetary restitution if he has been wrongfully convicted. The statute requires a judge to say that he was actually innocent, not just that the case was reversed on a technicality. And there's one being litigated out of Tulsa County right now where a person apparently was wrongfully convicted, but the judge has refused to make that finding. So there are some kinks in that system as well.
But the restitution to those wrongfully convicted has only been in statute the last 5 years, if I'm remembering right. It hadn't been that long.
You're right.
That they've actually had some restitution from the state or local that have wrongfully convicted them.
That is correct, and the remedy before that statute and sometimes since that statute is to simply go to court.
Right.
Rather than go to the legislature, is to go to court. The amount, try to decide what a year of your life's worth,
Well,
or
and-
10
and-
years
Well,
of
for
your
Jim,
life.
not much.
Well, and try to sue the government after you've
Yeah.
been in prison for 20 years and
The,
wrongfully convicted.
The cap in Oklahoma on the restitution is way below the federal level and is arguably inadequate. One of the recommendations is it be lifted to the federal cap on what can be recovered.
What is the federal cap? Can you?
I
do you
don't
know?
remember
Yeah, okay,
right now.
Sorry.
As we
More than ours.
As we talk about the Justice Commission and what your findings were, what solutions are you looking for? And we only have about 3 minutes in this segment, but we have quite a bit of time left. So what solutions are the members of the commission looking for?
Some of the solutions are simply police procedures. On confessions, we've recommended that they be videotaped so that a judge or a jury later on could determine not just, the black and white text of what the person said, but his demeanor and look at the whole picture. On identifications, we've asked that we change our procedures on lineups and photo spreads, that they be what's referred to as double blind, that the person who's conducting the lineup or photo spread be someone in the police department who does not know who the suspect is. So there's no way he can suggest to the witness that number 3 there looks pretty guilty to me, that kind of thing. A lot of it's police procedures, some of it's legislative, some of it is in instructions that are given to juries. So it's a wide gamut of remedies that are being recommended.
Is law enforcement on the commission?
Yes. We had sheriffs, we had police chiefs, we had Bill City was on the commission.
The Chief of Police of Oklahoma City.
That's correct. And we had line police officers from Edmond and Muskogee. We had a good selection of law enforcement. And a lot of what we're recommending, Chief City and the Oklahoma City Police Department is already doing.
Right.
But it needs to be done everywhere uniformly.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that law enforcement would be opposed to those type of recommendations. They want to make sure the bad guy is actually incarcerated.
Correct. If we have convicted an innocent person, that means there's a bad guy out there and probably still committing crimes. So nobody more than law enforcement wants to make sure we got the right guy.
Well, the DNA testing is also something that we want to talk about after a break, because we know there's a piece of legislation going through out at the Capitol that relates to this type of evidence for inmates who are in our system now.
So what we'll do is right after this break on Inside the Issue, we'll come back and discuss DNA testing and what's life after politics with Attorney General Drew Edmondson.
Welcome back to Inside the Issues. I'm Jim Dunlap along with Pat Hall, and we're very pleased today to have former Attorney General Drew Edmondson with us today, who is chair of the Justice Commission that continues to research and improve and help make tweaks to our justice system to make it the best it can be. General, thanks again for joining us. Before break, we were talking about what I think is House Bill 1068 by Lee Denny of the House and Senator Halligan of the Senate. A bill that is related to post-conviction DNA evidence and allowing those who think that there is something in the evidence pool that could exonerate them, that they have access to that. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's a measure that was endorsed by the commission, and we're very supportive of it, including law enforcement, including the OSBI that will actually be doing the testing. We were kind of surprised to find that Oklahoma was the only state in the nation that does not provide for access to forensic testing post-conviction. We used to. We had a law on the books, but it had a sunset provision in it. And so after the Oklahoma Indigent Defense System went through all of the letters that they got from inmates and tested everybody that they felt needed to be tested, the law was allowed to sunset and it went away. Since then, of course, thousands of more people have been convicted and sent to the penitentiary, and the technology has improved. The ability to do DNA testing on smaller and smaller amounts of evidence is being enhanced every day. It's a remarkable technology. So it becomes important again to make sure that we have access to that evidence.
Well, for full disclosure, Jim Dunlap and I are working on that piece of legislation and have been very proud that it's already passed the Oklahoma House and it's passed the Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously in all cases. And it seems both conservative and progressive say this is a good idea to make sure that innocent people are let out and guilty ones are put in. But the real key to this bill, isn't it also that they, not every person that is a petitioner or that is in prison or has been paroled has the right to have their DNA tested. There must be several elements that are in place, like the evidence must exist.
The evidence must exist. A judge must find that it's relevant, probative, and that the petitioner has made a good case that it might make a difference in his case. And if the court finds all of that, the OSBI is prepared to test it. They're in support of the bill. The fiscal impact would be negligent, minimal to non-existence. It's not going to happen all that often, and when it does happen, it's going to save us money if we find somebody who's incarcerated that shouldn't be.
Well, I want to compliment the OSBI because they have stepped up on this bill and told the members of the legislature, the legislative leadership, that in fact they will not ask for a supplemental appropriation, nor will they ask for additional appropriations for the implementation of this bill. Their new lab, their wonderful lab up next to the UCO campus, they're prepared to do this. They want to do this. And we also had Bob Ravitz, the Oklahoma County Public Defender, show up at the Capitol to testify that this is something that his office can support, and it won't be a burden on his office as well.
Yeah. Just to clear the record, I said Phelps a while ago. It was Jeffrey Todd Pierce, the rape case that got reversed due to DNA testing.
But having served as Attorney General for 16 years?
16.
Now to come out back in the private sector, but you're staying involved through this commission, what else is Drew Edmondson doing right now in the legal world?
Well, I'm doing a lot of relaxing. I'm enjoying that as much as I can. I'm working with Gable Gottwalls, a Tulsa, Oklahoma City law firm. So I'm in the Oklahoma City office of Gable and doing a lot of work for mostly corporate clients who have issues with attorneys general around the country, either issues that they want to bring to the AG's attention or in some way want to have a dialogue with AGs, and I've really enjoyed that. I get to keep going to the meetings, visit with my friends, and do some good for my clients.
Well, I think our viewers know enough about your history of Vietnam, Navy Vietnam veteran, a member of the Oklahoma legislature, Muskogee County Assistant District Attorney, a Muskogee County District Attorney for many years, and for 16 years, the Oklahoma Attorney General. And I've always wanted to ask you, what was the most, could you ever say, the most unusual or interesting case that you had as Attorney General?
Oh, as Attorney General.
Or as DA, I'll take either one.
As Attorney General, it would probably be the tobacco litigation. Right. As DA, and I was actually first assistant at the time, you know, the first degree murder, death penalty case that I ever prosecuted. And, you know, and when you do that, you just live with it for month after month. and it was a case, William Thomas Cartwright was the name of the defendant, where I actually arrested the defendant. He'd been on the lam for 3 days. His sister called the house and said if I would come over alone and unarmed, she'd tell me where he was. I went to her house sometime after midnight, and he was sitting there on the couch. And I said, you have to come with me. And we went down and booked him for murder one, and then I tried the case. I don't know if they'd let a DA get away with that
My question
days.
is, did your wonderful wife, Linda, know that you were going there? Or did she know after you went there?
Actually, Linda, Debbie Field was Cartwright's sister, had called the house. I was over at Lieutenant Jay Clinton's house shooting pool. So Linda called me and gave me this message.
So I know Linda well enough to know that.
She was thrilled about it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, having said that, though, and we can joke and laugh about the procedures, but when you get into a death penalty case, it changes your attitude. I remember serving on the Public Safety Committee and talking to the wardens and the correctional officers and those individuals who serve on death row. It's a different world, and it's not something that we take lightly in government. And I know as Attorney General, you didn't take that lightly either.
No, the 10 years that I was DA over in Muskogee, I went to the scene of every homicide.
Wow.
Because I didn't know whether some months later I would have to be describing that scene to a jury. And so it affects you, and it certainly affected my attitude as Attorney General. I remain a supporter of the death penalty, primarily because my experience sitting this far away from somebody who has committed that kind of a crime and seeing the lack of affect in their face and knowing they could come across that table and kill me as easily as you might step on a cockroach. You know that there are some people who, as long as they're alive, other lives are in danger. And society has a right to protect itself against those kinds of people. I'm obviously going to have little to nothing to do with it for the rest of my legal career, but it was a very interesting part of my time, a quarter century in that arena.
Well, and I also know that victims' rights and your victims' rights coordinator, all the time that you were the Attorney General, played a very key role in working with literally the victims and on the executions at McAllister. And I've always complimented you and your office, and former Attorney General Mike Turpin as well, for that aspect of victims' rights.
And by the same token, I've been taken to task on occasion for saying, and I believe it, that the day will come when we are able as a society to fix whatever it is that causes a human being to take another human being's life, whether it's some medical procedure or some chemical procedure. And when that day comes, and I hope I'm alive when it happens, I would look forward to abolishing the death penalty.
And
that's a fair statement.
Yeah, no, I agree, because it is a very difficult thing. But like you say, there are just some individuals that are a threat to society and a threat to the individual lives of other people. It is a national argument right now going on on the death penalty. But that argument, it seems to be more about the issues that you bring up from the commission side, getting it right. If they get it right, the death penalty seems to be a legitimate punishment.
Yeah, and there again, the technology is helping us do that. When I was prosecuting back in the 80s, we didn't do DNA testing. We didn't have DNA testing. It wasn't until toward the end of my term, I served from 82 to 92 in that office, that we started more or less routinely asking for DNA tests. And even then, you needed a large quantity of blood or a large quantity of semen or some other in order to get it done. We hadn't gotten into mitochondrial DNA, the hair follicles. And what they can do today is a world different than what we could do when I was prosecuting. So that technology is changing, and it makes it easier to get it right. Unlike other crimes, in a homicide, there's going to be some exchanges of bodily fluids at the scene. Either the defendant's going to get the victim's blood on them, or the defendant's going to leave blood or hair at the scene. And we're going to come closer and closer to being able to get it done, not just beyond a reasonable doubt, but with certainty.
Let me just ask you one question. Why are, and we only have 30 seconds, why are you and Linda burning up so many frequent miles going to Washington, D.C. area?
Well, you know, we just happen to have two beautiful grandchildren in Arlington, Virginia, Catherine and Andrew Edmondson Ross. My daughter Mary is married to Mike Ross, and they aren't bringing the grandchildren to Oklahoma City, so we go up there as often as we can to see them.
General, it's been an honor to have you on today. We want to let the viewers know that you can go to www.okbar.org to read the Commission's report, to what they do and what they're trying to do for Oklahomans to make it a better judicial system. General Edmondson, thank you again for being here.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks as always.
We'll be right back after this short break on Inside the Issues.
Welcome back to Inside the Issues. What a great show. Former Attorney General Drew Edmondson. Inside the Issues is proof old politicians don't die, they just come back on our show.
Yeah, but he brings good information to the show and tells us what's going on around the Capitol, involved in the Capitol, and legislation out there that still helps make Oklahoma better.
Absolutely. And next week, we're going to have the Democratic Minority Leader of the Oklahoma House of Representatives, frequent guest on the show, Scott Inman, Democrat from Del City. He'll be on the show talking about the relevancy of his caucus, where the Democratic Party is, and their goals for this session.
Like we said when we started the show, we're halfway through the legislative session. I know Representative Inman is happy about that. Easter's behind us. You'll start seeing the seersucker suits out at the Capitol. Spring is here, and hopefully we'll start heading down that downhill run to an adjournment and a bipartisan adjournment, I hope, out the Capitol this year.
Yeah, I do too. They've got to start on the budget. It's a $6.5 billion budget. They've got to start on it, and then they have to finish. Next week, please join us on Inside the Issues with Representative Scott Inman. We appreciate you watching. Stay viewers.
Thank you for watching Inside the Issues. The opinions expressed on Inside the Issues are not necessarily the views of Cox Communications, its employees, or its parent company.